It's not often a player can achieve national status as a junior, win a state title, dominate at the high school level, rewrite the record book in college, then own some of the South's toughest tournaments. But then again, there's only one Bill Shippey.
He was led by some of the greats in coaching and as players. And so he had a good template. And I think he's honored those people by treating the game with honor and treating his opponents with respect. And he's therefore gained the admiration of all the players he's played against.
In horse racing, you can almost always trace success back to lineage. If the same is true about tennis, Bill Shippey is hardcourt royalty. Born in Atlanta in 1947, the son of the legendary great Larry Shippey and the grandson of state champion and Southern titleist Frank Owens, Bill began to hit with his father at the age of 4, and it wouldn't take long for him to make a name for himself as he claimed his first state championship, winning the Georgia 13 and under title at the age of only 10.
It's remarkable back then, and especially he was pretty much trained by his dad, by Larry, and it's just amazing that he could be 3 years younger than kids, probably, you know, smaller obviously, maybe not as strong, and yet have the ability to do what it took to win the matches.
He was tiny too. He wasn't even a tall, big 9, 10-year-old. His eye-hand coordination was unbelievable. His composure was unbelievable.
Shippey continued his junior success, winning state titles in every junior division in both singles and doubles.
Everybody in the world knew who Bill Shippey was. I mean, he was up there, Bill, Zan, Gary. They were the big-time players in the whole area for it. And
Shippey teamed up with many local players and won the Southern Doubles Championship in every division, and was also #1 in the South in every category.
Bill was #1 ranked in doubles in every single age category, 13 under, 14 under, 16 under, 18 under, men's, and 35s. #1 in the South, every single division, which is not easy, to do. He won the state many times in the men's, as early when he was 16 years old the first time. And he was so good a doubles player that he picked up a pickup partner one year because his normal partner was Bill, and he won the state.
Bill won so many titles with different partners that I think that says a lot right there about his talent. And hell, he won so many with Richard Howell, he could win with anybody, it seemed.
Shippey would go on to attend the Lovett School in Atlanta, where he dominated Georgia high school tennis, winning an unprecedented 4 consecutive GHSA singles titles from 1962 to 1965.
Frankly, in high school, he was too good for the competition in the division. It was not, he didn't have to play that hard, to be truthful. He was so much better.
Bill Shippey grew up playing most of his tennis at the Bitsy Grant Tennis Center and some at the Piedmont Driving Club. But in the summer of 1965, after his graduation from high school, he won the driving club's prestigious men's championship, an unbelievable accomplishment for a teenager.
Well, Piedmont Driving Club was well known to host very tough championships through the ages. I mean, for the last 100 years, they've had excellent players. To win that championship at the driving club, which is one of the top 3 premier clubs in Atlanta, was quite a feet.
that was unbelievable because there was a fellow named Frank Willett who was Southern champion, and he was a member of the Piedmont Driving Club. He said, "Dadgummit, I won the Southerns, but I couldn't win the driving club. The driving club had the best tennis players back then of any place in the country."
Shippey's high school achievements caught the eye of legendary Georgia tennis coach Dan McGill, and he was awarded the first full scholarship in UGA tennis history.
Tennis, this all spring sports, track and field, the rest of them, there were very few full rides available. Of course, football didn't generate the revenue it does today, and that's where all the revenue came from, even back then. So it was quite a revolutionary idea to give a full scholarship to a spring sport athlete, much less a tennis player.
He was highly recruited by all the teams, and unfortunately for Tech, he chose to go to Georgia. And fortunately for Dan McGill, Bill became one of the original building blocks in the Georgia tennis dynasty.
Shippey hit the ground running at UGA. In 1966, he won the freshman #1 singles title with great wins over Florida's Armstead Neely and Tennessee's Tommy Moser.
Back then, he entered fall of '65. There was no varsity eligibility for freshmen. So he was in one of the strongest classes in history at that time, SEC #1. And he upset Armstead Neely, who went on to be the SEC #1 champion many times, in the semifinals. And Tommy Moser, a superstar from Tennessee, in the finals. Bill actually won the #1 position conference championship as a freshman.
I was so proud of him. And Dan McGill was beside himself. He just was just so excited for Bill. That's how good and determined he was, and just you know, it's hard to, the superlatives, you run out of superlatives after a while.
After his freshman season, Shippey then excelled on the varsity, becoming a 3-time Georgia Collegiate singles and doubles champion from 1967 to 1969. He played #1 for the Bulldogs all but 1 year, his senior season, but he would later defeat the #1 player, Danny Birchmore, in the finals of the Georgia Collegiate Championship.
He won the Georgia Collegiates 4 years in a row. I mean, that's really an accomplishment.
Not only was Shippey a great tennis player, he was also a great all-around athlete, excelling at basketball in high school, and then later becoming the #1 rifle shooter in his basic training platoon at Fort Polk in Louisiana in the summer of 1969.
Growing up on clay at Betsy Grant, that demands a lot of feel, a lot of touch, and that's the way he played the game. So having feel and touch in basketball or baseball, having soft hands in any sport is advantageous. Bill had that in spades.
Like Ted Williams, he could see that ball. He could see that ball, and if you saw him play tennis, he hit that ball on the rise. And when he came in, crisp volley, and if he had an overhead, kabam, it was gone.
Shippey's tennis career slowed after college, but at the age of 35, he briefly returned to the court, rising to the #1 doubles ranking in the South.
There was a young man, he'd been playing #1 for Georgia Tech, decided to drop out of school and was going to play the circuit. And Betsy Grant one day, things started happening, and somebody said, well, you couldn't beat Bill Shippey, and Bill hadn't picked up a racket in about a month. He was building houses, and he walked in there and had on a t-shirt with paint all over it. Next thing you know, they all start talking to one another, and he goes and gets a racket out of Larry's locker, and straight sets. There goes down this boy that was going to try to make the circuit, and Bill told him, I don't think you're ready.
Shippey continued contributing to the game as he became one of the best tennis court builders in the South. He even resurfaced the courts every year at the University of Georgia, usually just before the NCAA tournament.
Bill really had a great business sense, and you know, I would think, and it was proven by the relationship with the University of Georgia on always resurfacing the courts. They trusted him more than anybody.
Well, Bill made a reputation as a player of integrity, and he took that into the business world and became the premier court builder in the state of Georgia, and you could argue throughout the South.
From his junior tennis success through his accomplishments in college, very few Hall of Fame inductees are as deserving as Bill Shippey.
I look back at the history of our state. He's in the top 5 to 10 players that are native Georgians, if you measure them at their peak. So that speaks for itself. His impact on the University of Georgia's tennis program, his success in the South and the nation too, is often always nationally ranked. Candidly, it's a terrible oversight. The committee has taken a lot of criticism for Bill being not in today. It's really been overlooked, and it's way past time, but better late than never.
Congratulations to Bill Shippey, a 2019 inductee into the Georgia Tennis Hall of Fame.